I know y'all heard this, is the conception of the Virgin Mary free from original sin by virtue of the merits of her Son, Jesus. The Catholic Church teaches that God acted upon Mary in the first moment of her conception, keeping her immaculate. Immaculate meaning without soil or without sin. Since Mary was conceived without stain of Adam's sin, we say that her conception was immaculate. The Catholic Church celebrates the Feast of the Immaculate Conception on December 8th, which is a holy day of obligation. The Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Virgin Mary is the dogma proclaimed in Christian tradition and defined in 1854. That from the moment of her conception, Mary, by the singular grace of God and by virtue of the merits of Jesus Christ, was preserved immune from original sin. While there is no explicit revelation of the Immaculate Conception in the Scriptures, Pope Pius IX cited 3 references as the biblical basis for the Immaculate Conception to be a doctrine revealed by God. 3 citations are Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, Luke chapter 1, verse 28, and Luke chapter 1, verse 24. The dogma of the Immaculate Conception teaches that Mary was free from original sin and actual sin, or mortal and venial sins, from the first moment of her conception. Also, Our Lady's freedom from sin is the result of a very special grace from God, making her free from original sin. Theologians say Mary's pre-redemption was the pouring out of grace at the moment of her soul's instance into her body, which allowed Our Lady to be free from all sin throughout her entire life. Our Lady was sinless. When humans are conceived, their parents pass on to them original sin. Original sin enslaves us to the power of sin and inclines us to rebel against God's will. By her Immaculate Conception, Our Lady was free from original sin and was given a powerful and radical freedom to do God's will with perfect love and to please Him in all things. Her freedom was so great that Our Lady remained sinless throughout her entire life. An examination of the Church's history indicates that from the very beginning, the early Christians considered it an historical fact that Mary Most Holy was conceived in the womb of her mother, St. Anne, and was preserved from original sin by God Himself. This belief is clearly present in the prayers the Church composed in the public worship, and in the preachings and the writings of the early Church Fathers. However, it took centuries to fully express and uncover the wonders of God's grace with regard to Mary and her place in His saving plan. The Church begs God for the healing of our sinfulness, so that in heaven we may attain the sinless holiness Mary now enjoys, solely because of the saving power of Jesus and no other. We have a printout of Mary back there. It's a beautiful picture of her, so help yourself to a picture of her and take it home. Thank you.
that, let's see what, gee, remind me to get bigger print next time. My goodness. Let's see. That's what Luke says, Luke, yeah. You need to be in the light, I guess, to see this. Yeah, our English translation is a little bit dull. Actually, the Latin Vulgate says, plena gratia, hail full of grace, which is the translation for the Greek word kekai domine. And I sometimes was squeamish about our English translations. But the revised standard version of the Catholic Bible, I think, says, hail full of grace, which is a more exact translation. And that's one of the reasons that she said the doctrine is based upon scriptural. If you're full of grace, it means you don't have any sin. So, the Blessed Mother is a mystery. We don't understand that aspect of her life. She's as human as you and I are, except that she was conceived without original sin. And okay. All right. She's the only one that never said no to God. This is going to be fun tonight. I got to look over the top of these glasses at you. I started to work on this and make it larger, but I gave up because I didn't have enough time. So it'll do. But anyway, that I think is sometimes that's a kind of a hesitation where non-Catholics are concerned because it's unique to the Catholic Church. The best way to approach that, I think, is to ask her son Jesus to give you a full understanding of what his mother's position is, where she belongs in the church. Tonight we're going to be talking about living a Catholic moral life. And that as well is something start using some Catholic terminology. And so if you find me using words that don't make sense or you don't understand, you have to let me know so we can sort of go back and explain them. Morality is not just something the way we feel about things, but it's based upon solid principles. And so sometimes what is right or what is wrong, we don't necessarily feel comfortable with. But if it's the truth, then we have to accept it. It's not a matter of how I feel about something. Truth is truth. My truth today, a lot of times, my truth is not necessarily your truth. Or at least that's what the culture tries to tell us. But I always think about, because truth is one. It doesn't make any difference where you find it. And I remember years ago when we did the moonshot and half of the side of the rocket blew out. And And computers were sort of in their infancy, but they were around. We could have never made that moonshot had we not had computers. And had we not had a computer, we would not have been able to get that rocket back, that spaceship back with those astronauts in it. But they figured out just how to do it, to get it in close enough to the moon so they could sling that spacecraft around the moon and sling it back to Earth and get caught in the Earth's gravity and bring it back to Earth. That's a stupendous accomplishment. That depended on truth. That 2 plus 2 always made 4. Not 4 plus 1 or 4.5 or 4 3/4, 4-ish. No, it demanded precision, and that there was a truth there that could be counted on. Otherwise, they would never have gotten back. That applies to everything. Truth is truth. And so this is what we're going to be dealing with in terms of our moral life as well. There is an objective truth. Objective truth. It's not dependent upon how I feel about it, not dependent upon how you feel about it. It's true. So, how do we come about this? Or how can we determine right or wrong? It's based upon something being objectively true or not. But it's also based upon my freedom to choose. And that makes me what we call a moral subject. A moral subject is you, and me. And that's just again, a term that we'll have to begin to be comfortable with. I'm a moral subject, and that means that my human acts that are freely chosen, in consequence of a judgment of conscience, can be morally evaluated. That is why I am a moral subject. My actions can be morally evaluated. Either meaning that something is either good or bad, right or wrong. But I'm the subject of that moral judgment. I do those things. So my actions can be judged. Especially by myself. And as children, that's why this is very important, that you as parents, potential parents, must train your children in what is right and what is wrong, so that they don't grow up having a smeared sense of morality. Oh, this is just the way I feel about it. The feelings come and go. My feeling may be different today than it is tomorrow. And now my feelings are going to probably be different than your feelings. Morality is not based upon that. It's upon a human act that can be freely chosen. I choose to do this. There was a guy, comedian, Flip Wilson, years ago. He'd always say, you blame it on somebody else. Oh, the devil made me do it. Yeah, and he would accuse them. Oh, the devil made me do it. Well, that's what happened to our first parents in Genesis, in the Garden of Eden. The Lord God came walking in the cool of the night, and he called for his man that he had created, man and the woman, and they were hiding. And he says, why are you hiding? Oh, we heard you in the garden, we were afraid because we were naked. And he said, who told you you were naked? Then you must have eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good or evil. And why did you do such a thing? Well, she made me do it. She gave me the apple. It wasn't an apple. she gave me fruit, and I ate it. So the Lord asks the woman, well, she ain't going to accept responsibility either. So she says, no, the serpent, he tricked me. It was a blame game from the very beginning. And we find that today as well, that no one wants to really, in society, accept responsibility for their actions. And yet, that's exactly what we have to learn to do, to accept responsibility for our own actions. Because we will be judged according to the morality of our actions. Okay? Our actions are either good or bad, possibly indifferent. Like tying your shoes in the morning, it's not really a good or bad action, you just do it. I mean, it's indifferent. But they're either, most of the time, an action that we judge to be either good or bad. Society itself, of course, we blame a lot of stuff on society, but society itself is neither good or bad. It's the sinful acts of individuals that color our society. So if our society is bad, it's the result of individual sinful acts. So to change society, there needs to be a turnaround in which we practice good, we do good acts. We are not doing bad acts, sinful acts, but we're doing virtuous acts. That will change society. Laws are not going to change society. We've got more laws than we can shake a stick at. Laws that we don't even know that are on the books. What will change society is the individual conversion of you and me in our hearts. And when I begin to act virtuously, the world will change. Or the society will change. If we have enough virtuous people, our society will change. And then, usually, the laws will follow. But we get what we deserve. From a sinful society, you get sinful laws many times. And that's because you and I are responsible for our own individual acts. And after a while, that has its effect upon society. When there are a significant number of people who no longer act morally. Okay? What is the basis for morality of human acts? Number one, it has to do with the object chosen. What are we planning to do? The object chosen is either a good toward which we will direct ourselves. It's a concrete action. Our will is drawn to that which is good. And so, even a bad act has some good aspects to it. And that's what attracts the will. We're choosing to do something which may be morally bad. For instance, murder is always wrong. You can never justify murder. But in some instances, someone may have so perverted their will that they see killing someone as something good. See where this is going? Abortion. An innocent child hasn't harmed anyone. So, and yet we choose to terminate, to take that child's life. We're going to talk about the morality of that in terms of the circumstances as well in just a minute. But that's an act that's chosen. Morally good acts, for instance, are like prayer, almsgiving, even virtuous acts like helping your neighbor. But they can be perverted by evil intentions or bad intentions. If you remember the story, maybe you don't know the scriptures well yet. Jesus was with the disciples watching the people near the temple area where there was a poor box. And the Pharisees were walking by, and he was noting how they were dropping in the money. And of course, they had their long tassels and the phylacteries they were wearing on their forehead, on their shoulders. And he was making a point of the fact how they were demonstrating their graciousness and their generosity. And then there came along this widow who dropped in a small coin. And but he noted that, and he told the disciples that was out of her need. This was all that she had to live on. She dropped in there. And that her contribution was far, far more valuable than theirs, because theirs were given out of their abundance. And not only that, they kind of had perverted it because they were making a show of it. They have destroyed a good action by their evil intention, showing off pride. So it can be a lot of things that are done in that way. I can walk around all day like this, prayer, very holy looking guy, and everybody saying, "Oh, he's holy, he's holy." Why am I doing that? So I get all the praise, huh? Don't kid yourself. We're all walking around with clay feet. So, just because I wear vestments sometimes I'm standing at the altar with hands folded and I'm counting sheep out in the pasture somewhere. So that's a little secret. Morally evil acts are always wrong. Choose because it involves a disordered act of the will. Adultery, murder. Again, we're saying adultery is always wrong. Murder is always wrong. And it cannot be made good by a good intention. Just because my neighbor is a nuisance, because he's causing trouble in the neighborhood, it doesn't give me the right to take his life and get him out of the way. We'll have a quiet neighborhood afterwards, but it's not a good intention. You can't do evil. This applies a lot in, for instance, I would not want to be the president of a country or the leader of a country in terms of war, because there's so many, these people are involved in moral actions. When do you go to war? Because every time you send someone into war, someone is going to be killed. So you have a moral responsibility of determining whether this is justified or not. But it's a moral act that I make as a leader. And so I'm going to be called to judgment based upon that moral act that I decide as a leader of a country. So we really need to pray for our leaders that they make morally good decisions. The intention is also a determining factor of the morality, as we've already seen it. And the intention it's in me. It lies in the voluntary source of an action and determines the action by its end. If I have a good motive for doing something, and it's a good act, then It is a good act. But a good intention doesn't ever make a disordered act good. In other words, I can't do evil so that good can come of it, because my intention then destroys the good action. One may never do evil so that good may result of it. The end does not, you hear this quite a bit, the end does not justify the means. The means by which we, or the means that we use to do something. We can't lie to say, rectify some kind of situation. That's using an evil means, although we have a good intention. So, circumstances as well are secondary elements. Circumstances don't necessarily make something good or bad, but they can increase or decrease the amount of evil or the amount of good. There was a lady here in the parish who used to, I always think about her because she used to ride around on a big wheel tricycle. And she had tied onto the back of this tricycle big old plastic bag, and she was going around picking up cans. And in the middle of the summertime, in August, the heat of the day, in the wintertime, it's cold, and just to make a few dollars to help her family out. Now, the circumstances of that, you could steal $10 from me. I like cigars with my $10 bills. I'm kidding, I don't smoke. But $10, $10 don't mean a whole lot to most of us. I mean, some of us, we're scrimping and saving. Yes, it means a great deal. But generally speaking, for myself, $10, $20, we spend that and don't even think about it. But why not steal $10 from her? I think it would be a serious sin. It would be a serious evil, because she needs the $10 to live on. She spent all that time out in the heat or out in the cold, working, picking up cans, just to get that $10. So the circumstances there could either increase or decrease the moral goodness or badness of an action. That brings me back to the idea of abortion. Circumstances have a lot to do with this. It doesn't take away the moral evil, but the culpability of the individual. The circumstances can increase or decrease the moral responsibility. Many times, young girls, life is life, and things happen, and they're pregnant. And they might go to a school counselor or